Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the First Time Buyer webinar. This is the first time we've ever done this, so fingers crossed it all works to plan. Today we're here to answer some of your questions about the first time buyer market, about the virus and how it has an impact. Anything you'd like to ask, we're here to hopefully help you. And I'd like to introduce our team of experts. We have Tony Harker. He's an independent housing advisor, a consultant rather, not advisor, a consultant. He's been working in the property industry for many years and is a real guru when it comes to anything to do with buying your first home. Rupi Hunjan, who's the MD and owner of Sensio Financial. So he will answer anything to do with mortgage related questions. And Adam Crawford, partner and head of new build homes at Prince Evans, who will be helping with anything to do with conveyancing. So welcome, and our first question today is what can first time buyers do at the moment to kind of prepare themselves for buying a new home, their first home, in the current situation? And maybe Tony, you could kick off and give us some ideas.
Yeah, sure. Well, good morning, everyone. I mean, one of the first things at this time, we're all self-isolating. We're not allowed to be out and about too much. So one of the best things to be doing with your time at the moment is to start and prepare for when we can get back out to purchase and look at properties. Lots of ways you can do that. Some of the best ones at the moment being looking at some of the websites. There's a number of websites from sort of Share to Buy, Homes for London, and then the Help to Buy agents around the country, which I'm sure we can share with you at the end. I think one of the key things here is take that opportunity at the moment to actually research the different properties, looking at those websites, but also take the opportunity to get in touch with some of the financial advisors, which most of the housing associations and developers offering these products will have the details of their financial advisors on. We've got Rupi here obviously today. It's a great time for you to start looking at what you can afford in the current market and to look at your own current circumstances to ensure that's possible. Also, make sure that you look at the solicitors. Find solicitors who can actually deal with shared ownership. Don't just take the word for it, research that, get in touch with them, give them a call, see how they react to you. If you get that friendly, efficient service, it's a great opportunity for you, and you will then can check and look into those companies to see that they're the right ones for you to do. So it's all about research, preparing. When you do go around to applying for a property, you're going to need to have your documents available. The lenders will need them, the financial advisors will need them. So start searching now for bank statements, pay slips, your ID to comfort your passport or a driving license, and utility bills. They'll all help you to be able to secure a property quick when the time is right.
Great, thank you, Tony. Rupi, do you have anything to add to that about trying to think about getting a mortgage in the future?
Well, mortgage companies right now, because people can go out to value things, they kind of calm down. They're not lending as much, and a lot of them have stopped lending. You have to believe there will be a recovery. You have to believe that this is a temporary situation. And as Tony said, be ready for when you come out the other side and use the time to do that research, find out exactly where you want to live, what you want to live in, how much it's going to cost you. You've got time now to make a decision that's going to help you along for the rest of your lives. So use the time wisely, exactly the same as Tony.
Absolutely, thank you. And Adam, anything just from the conveyancing front?
Not particularly. Endorse what Tony and Rupi have both said. Obviously, first-time buyers generally are not going to understand the conveyancing process. So now's a really good time to learn that a little bit. Lots of online resources where you can understand what conveyancing means, what the process is, And of course, you can pick up the phone and speak to someone that specialises, have a chat and just kind of understand what you'll need to do and what the process is. That would be my advice.
What, Linda, can I just add that obviously with both Rupi and Adam here, they're both two professionals that work very closely with housing associations and providers, and there are other people out there, and I think the key is, you know, most housing associations, most local authorities doing this, and most developers doing this will have people that are familiar with the products that are available, and that is a really important thing to look at. There's too many people who say that they know about it but actually don't, and that can cause a lot of stress and a lot of pressure to buyers. I think it's really important that people do the research and ensure they do get the right professionals that know this market.
Absolutely. And I can also just add, please do look at the magazine, because it is full of information to help guide you through this kind of maze that it is to actually get to buying your first home. We are actually giving the magazine online for free. There is a link which we will give you at some point later on. But thank you all very much. And let's go on to the next question.
Yeah, so the next question we have is just to explain a little bit about shared ownership.
Ah, okay. So could we just have a potted view of shared ownership, Tony?
Okay, right. Shared ownership is one of the most established and long-serving products for first-time buyers. But believe it or not, it's still not known. There's so many people who don't know it. Now, in my 15 years of working in this industry, I've helped thousands of people, but for some reason, it hasn't got out there that this product is available. It's fairly straightforward. Basically, you can buy between 25 to 75% share in the property to begin with. Now, that is based on an affordability assessment that financial advisors that work with the developers will undertake. That 75%, up to 75% is what you can buy initially, and then you pay a rent on the share that you don't own. That's a subsidised rent. So it's usually up to 3%. Most people 2.75, but in certain areas where it's quite expensive, it could be lower. Now, you might think 3%, is that good? Well, the reality is we're about 11 o'clock at the moment, and if you tuned into BBC, there's a programme on at the moment where you're actually selling properties through auctions, and a lot of those people who are buying those properties are investors, and if you watch those programs, they're looking at finding a tenant to rent that, which will achieve a yield for them of around 6%. Now, on top of that, you will have to pay a service charge. Now, that service charge, you pay the full amount, and the service charge is basically covers things like the maintenance and the repairs of the building which you live in, not everything, not the things inside your property, just the building and also the estate costs, but also it covers things like the building's insurance and something called the sinking fund, or sometimes it's known as the reserve fund, which is it's a fund that's built up to help towards any major expenses that occur on the property. That in a nutshell is what shared ownership is. It's based on the market value. So anybody who's selling shared ownership is valuing the properties before they actually go to market based on the market. They're not inflated prices, they're based on what the current market is offering.
Thank you, Tony. Adam, is there any difference between the conveyancing for a shared ownership property to any other one?
There is. Broadly, the process is the same, but there are some sort of key differences, which is why you need to make sure you use a shared ownership expert who will understand those. There's differences to the form of lease. There's differences to certain processes around the mortgage. I won't go into great detail here because it will just confuse people, but it sort of reinforces why you need to make sure you use a shared ownership expert.
Yeah, definitely. Rupi, mortgages for shared ownership properties, are they the same, easy to get?
Yeah, there's currently about 30, nearly 30 lenders who lend. You range from 95% loan to value to you know, 50, 60, whatever, same as everyone else. You should seek expert advice is specialist, because you're dealing with the housing associations, you're dealing with different types of leases, and the conveyancers are all slightly different. So if you don't go to a specialist, they won't know how it all works, and that delays things. Readily available, people want to lend on them. We've had 4 new banks reach out to us in the first quarter of this year to ask about shared ownership mortgages. So yeah, the processes are the same, and they seem very similar.
Fabulous, thank you. Lovely. So have we another question?
Yeah, we've had a few questions in, so that's great. One question we have here is, my housing association wants me to move as my house is for sale, but the buyer and I can't go anywhere due to the virus. They're now telling me to get my house revalued or stop the sale. Considering removals and storage companies aren't working, what should I do?
That's a tricky one, isn't it? Okay, so Tony, any thoughts on this?
Okay, the simple fact in the matter that we're in at the moment is the priority is the health of individuals and the public. That has to be priority. And everybody who is actually dealing with transactions at the moment have to appreciate the importance of that for everyone's safety. What it does depend. It depends on the property. From the question, it sounds like it's you actually buying a property from somebody, maybe a resale type property, and in those instances, the advice is not to complete and trying to delay the sale wherever possible. And from what my understanding is on this, that the current deal, the current value would stand and would transfer on to a delayed process. So for me, I think it would be probably inappropriate for the people to push that sale at this time, unless it's exceptional circumstances. And to be honest, you're going to struggle to get people to help with the moving process.
Yeah. Adam, any legalities on that question that you could see? Just obviously, you don't know the full situation, obviously.
Yeah, taking the assumption that it's a resale and the pressure is coming because perhaps the valuation is due to expire, housing associations can exercise discretion to extend those where there's extenuating circumstances and where there's legal reasons for delay. This would certainly apply. So I would be recommending that the seller speaks to the housing association and asks them to apply that discretion in the exceptional circumstances. As Tony has already said, government advice and also Law Society advice is that people should delay where possible. It is feasible to still exchange contracts and fix a date for completion in the future with a clause in the contract basically to enable you to delay further or perhaps even rescind if a coronavirus impacts you from being able to move. You know, for example, if someone lost their job, couldn't get a mortgage, if someone became sick, if someone was self-isolating. So probably worth speaking to your conveyancer as well about what the options are.
Definitely. Really good advice. Thank you, Adam. Excellent. Lovely. Next question, please.
Next question is, why do I need a conveyancer? Can any conveyancer do a shared ownership sale?
Okay, Adam, I think this is definitely one for you.
It definitely is, yes. Well, firstly, why do you need a conveyancer? Well, frankly, you're not going to have the expertise to be able to carry out the legalities of a sale or purchase yourself. And furthermore, your mortgage lender will insist that a conveyancer is involved to protect their interests as well. In terms of whether you need someone shared ownership, absolutely. I've specialised in shared ownership myself for about 12 years now, and I have to say, when we deal with a conveyancer on the other side who doesn't, it can be very difficult because they do not understand the quirks and the processes, interaction with the housing association, etc., etc.
Lovely, thank you. Great. Have we another one?
There's a few more questions here. What is a mortgage in principle?
Oh, Rupi, this definitely is you.
Well, the mortgage in principle is exactly what it is. It's in principle you can have this mortgage as long as everything else stacks up, i.e. valuation and credit checks. People, you could call it a decision in principle, mortgage in principle. Some mortgage firms issue their own mortgages in principle. You know very quickly nowadays, especially if you're dealing with someone who's used to dealing in shared ownership, whether or not someone would get a mortgage. And it's exactly what it is. In principle, you can have this mortgage as long as everything else will stack up.
Lovely. Okay, thank you.
Another question. I currently save with a lifetime ISA. I wonder if it is better for me to buy a new build, so a new home, or an existing property that may need renovations. What would be the better investment?
Right. Rupi, what is the better investment?
It's funny, when you buy something new, it's like buying a new car, there's a premium. When you buy a new build, there's a premium. But you can buy second-hand property, but both have pros and cons. A new build, you walk straight in, you're ready to go. How much renovation does an old property need? And where would you get the cash to renovate that property? So it really depends on how much time, effort, energy you want to put into doing up an old property and how old that old property is. It's definitely worth looking at resales or second-hand shared ownership properties. These things could be 5 to 10 years old. They still look like new build. Or you buy a street property, which could be an old Victorian house with damp and rickety old windows. So it's what's better really depends on your budget and how much you want to inconvenience yourself.
Definitely. Tony, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Everyone's circumstance is different. Some people like old properties, some like new. Some want to do their own work and do little things to it, others don't. I think the resale market is always a good market if you want to put your own stamp on it fairly quickly. But at the moment, we're in a situation where certainly based on some economists' information that's coming out at the moment about the market, we're potentially looking at a challenging market for probably the next 3 to 6 months. And in that time, anyone who's looking at new builds potentially have the opportunity to get some great deals. There will be a number of properties that are empty. There'll be properties that are available immediately that the developers, the housing associations will want to get occupied because it impacts on their cash flow as well. So they will want them occupied, and they will probably, and I have seen some already in the last couple of days, where people are offering incentives. Now that might be a furniture park, it might be help towards legal costs, various different, it could be a discount off the price. So, you know, every different thing, there are options for different peoples, whether it be new build or be the resale market.
That's great advice, because I think, you know, this is the time, as you are having more time at home, where you can look and see what actually is out there and what the incentives might be. Thank you. So another question.
Yeah, I think a few seem like this. There seems to be lots of first-time buyers kind of ready to go, but obviously in the current situation, they might not feel that they can. Well, I've got one here saying, I have my deposit already, but no, I can't currently look at homes in the area that I want. Is there a way I can still view homes in the current corona climate?
Yes, definitely. Tony.
Okay, I think generally most developers, housing associations now are not actually doing physical viewings. You know, obviously there's the safety of everybody in place. On the run up to the lockdown situation, people were doing it with social distancing. However, a lot of providers now have taken that opportunity over the last couple of weeks to actually go out and do virtual tours, produce CGIs, take photography of the properties and of the developments. So if you actually go onto their websites, so if you've seen properties that you like, or if you have a look at the actual provider's website as opposed to these UK portals, you may find that you will find a lot more information about the properties. I mean, some housing providers out there will allow you to probably reserve over the online basis, or you know, and put a partial deposit down. You will need to speak to everyone individually, and then obviously when we come out of this, you'll be able to go and view it, and if it's right, then maybe put the full deposit down. I don't know the exact details on that, but you would have to look at each individual provider. What I will say is the business hasn't stopped. People are out there waiting to take your calls. People are there on the end of the emails and the internet to actually help and provide advice and support to you. So don't think that everything has shut down. People, like everyone, is working from home, like we are today. We're still communicating, and that line of communication is there and is open for people to get that advice and to get that support.
Thank you. Rupi, on that note about if you saw a place and you wanted to put a deposit down, what would your situation be with, say, you know, you put your deposit down, would you be okay about a mortgage? Would you recommend that they did that?
I would recommend they do a full financial assessment first.
Can they still do that at the moment?
Right now, for example, we've got 2 people waiting for assessment. Assessments are still coming through. They're down by about 75%, but we're still doing assessments for people. People are still looking. Get your assessment done, find out what you can borrow, what you can afford, and whether, well, the assessment will tell you whether you qualify for a shared ownership property, and also tell you whether or not you can afford it and what you can afford. That way you're there armed with something which is accurate to a point of about 90%, because we're not doing any credit checks at this moment in time. But
No.
we'll give you a good idea whether or not you'd be able to buy that property. Go and see the property, have a chat with the sales advisor and say, listen, I'd like to buy this property. What can you do for me? How much deposit you want? And even talk to the housing association and say, can I have my, you know, have a caveat. You don't mind putting a reservation in, but when you physically see the property, and if you don't like it, what's the situation then?
Right.
So you're at no loss.
Adam, from a legal point of view, if you put down a deposit on something that you'd only just seen online and you're virtually doing it sort of off plan, even if you've had a virtual walkthrough of a show home, is that legally binding still? Well, how does that work? I mean, would you get your money back if you eventually saw it and didn't like it?
You would have to check what the terms are of that particular developer or housing association, to be honest. But you'd like to think that in the current climate, they're obviously going to be taking a slightly different approach, and they'd probably be very keen to get the reservation, even if it is on a basis that once you then view the property, once you've then checked whether you can get a mortgage, whether it can be refunded. But in actual sort of legal terms, if someone's paid a reservation fee and it's non-refundable, the housing association or developer is entitled to retain their reasonable costs. Now, obviously, that's very open to interpretation, but I'd recommend anyone reserving right now just has that conversation with the developer or housing association.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Lovely. What else have we got here?
Sorry, did you want another question?
Sorry.
Okay, I've recently bought a new home through Help to Buy, but due to my financial situation during the virus, I may need to agree a mortgage holiday. Firstly, will this affect my credit score? And secondly, will this affect me when I get my property remortgaged?
Lovely. Well, Rupi,
the banks are just coming out with statements. They started last week, they started coming through. The problem is you try to ring the bank, no one can get through right now. So what I advise is go onto the bank's website. They'll have a full description of exactly what you can do, what you can't do. Each bank, each lender has a different policy. On the whole, it shouldn't affect your credit, but the detail is in each individual bank has different detail. Should it affect your credit? Should it affect you getting a new mortgage? But do tell the bank straight away. If you can't get through, email them. And but the first point of call, I wouldn't try ringing them. I'd go straight to the website, log on where it says mortgage holidays, and go from there. Most people use the top 6 lenders, and they've been very good so far.
I did understand yesterday, I had a press release from Experian saying that there is a kind of credit check freeze for, I think, 3 months. So I think there's 3 or 4 of the credit people that are doing this. So if your credit was all fine, it will be frozen. They're not going to suddenly do another credit check and change it. So that's really good news. Tony, could you just very quickly, could you just explain what Help to Buy is? Because I know that this is coming to a close soon.
It's actually come to close today, the old one. So there is a new Help to Buy out there now. It is slightly different because it's regionalised. So I would suggest everyone looks at the Help to Buy websites on that. So there is a cap on the equity loan scheme. Basically, you actually have a property that is from a developer. The price is slightly different from shared ownership in as much as it's whatever it's being marketed at and whatever you, with the negotiators, agree as the price. So it's not based on the actual valuation, it's what the developers can actually get for it. And what it does, it allows you to get an equity loan, which in London is up to 40%, outside London is 20%. And that equity loan is free for the first 5 years. And then after the 5 years, you then do start paying the interest on that. So you have to secure a mortgage for the amount that you are actually the 80% or the 60% according to where you are based in the country.
Lovely, thank you. Do we have time for one more question?
I think we do. We have another one related to the current situation, and perhaps there are lots of first-time buyers looking for a bargain. Maybe they've got their deposit saved. Do you expect prices to change because of the current situation? Are there likely to be some deals to be had?
Right. Rupi, do you think there will be some deals to be had and the prices will change?
I think it really depends on how long we're sitting at home for. There's always been demand, there's always been a lack of supply. We had Brexit just before this and things kind of flattened out, and we got the prices were about right. We weren't getting as many down valuations by the end of the year as we were at the beginning. So the prices are about right, banks were lending, everything was going fine. This has never happened before. Are we going to be at home for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months? No one really knows. I hope it's short. If it's short, will you get bargains? You might get a few deals where furniture packs are thrown in or incentives, but I can't see the prices crashing or, coming down too much. I think there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand again, just as we found in Brexit. January was busy. The first quarter was really busy.
Very busy.
The last quarter wasn't, because we were waiting for Brexit and an election. If we have a quarter of no activity, when we go back, it's going to be busy again. I can't see the prices.
Yeah, absolutely. We first-time buyers are still going to be there.
Yeah.
It might just be a slight delay, but they're still going to want to buy their first home.
For shared ownership, there's about 8 to 9 people looking for every property available already.
Crazy, isn't it? Absolutely. Well, I'd really like to thank the panel of experts. You've been amazing and really, really very useful information, which I'm sure everybody's enjoyed listening to. Just before we end, I'd just like to say a really big thank you to everybody that's working in the NHS at the moment. We all appreciate every bit of work, the long hours, the stress, all the things that you do. And we want to support you as much as we can, and we will be. But thank you so much for today, and we look forward to joining another webinar very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.